Afternoon, everyone. My name is Dan Saipan. I'm the director of GEL, which is Global Experiential Learning. Thank you for joining us for our second installment of our January session of our January virtual series today. Today we have a really interesting topic, Wildcats in Australia and New Zealand. It's a program that I learned about a couple years ago, and it's a really amazing exchange program that we see students from Australia and New Zealand come here, as well as our Wildcats going over there. Just an update, we still are not traveling just due to the pandemic, but we hope to continue soon. So please still mask up, social distance, and if you have the opportunity, vax up as well. And we have a new feature this year. We are doing captioning. So if you do not see the captioning on your screen, please just go to your Zoom toolbar and push show subtitle. And with all these webinars, of course, I couldn't do it alone. GEL is super centered. So I would like to introduce the team that has been working with me for this past month on this project.
Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. My name is Vanessa Madrid. I am a senior here at the University of Arizona studying political science and public management and policy. And I'm also a student intern here with GEL.
Hello, I'm Leslie Soto. I'm a current senior here at the University of Arizona. I am majoring in speech, language, and hearing sciences, and I am currently also an intern for GEL.
Hello there, my name is Elena Puff. I'm a fourth year PhD student in the school psychology program here at U of A, and I'm the graduate assistant for GEL. If we can go to the next slide, please. Perfect. So before we jump into the content of our webinar today, I want to take a second to explain to you what GEL is. So GEL stands for Global Experiential Learning. And GEL is a distinguishable program here at the U of A. We seek to integrate travel, education, and service learning to provide both knowledge and skills to students during their time at the University of Arizona and beyond. We focus our efforts mainly on increasing access and participation for traditionally marginalized students. So more specifically, first-generation students, DACA undocumented students, and students from low SES backgrounds. We really believe here at GEL that all students should have access to travel opportunities throughout their college career. So pre-COVID, we offered both domestic and international travel opportunities at low or no cost to students. For some of our trips, students were actually able to receive academic credit for their travel. And the focus of our trips were really centered on issues of social justice, environmental justice, cultural identity exploration, and service learning.
Before we continue with the webinar, we at GEL would like to acknowledge the land in which we sit upon. With this being said, we want to share with you this land acknowledgement video that was created by the UA American Indian Alumni Club.
Skiktash Wasajamai, Anian Upjigik, Amy Len Spotted Wolf, Aniapam Amjad, Jer Shaik, Wawikir Dikjikshan, Tanatam Joed. Annual Miss Indian Arizona 2020-2021. Good day. My name is Amy Lynn Spotted Wolf, and I come from the Fresno Canyon community in the Babikiwi district on the Tanatam Nation. I am a senior here at the University of Arizona studying elementary education under the Indigenous Teacher Education Project. I am Miss Indian Arizona 2020-2021. Samach Achmach An Tanatam Hajurika Dam Oyopo. We acknowledge our presence on the Tanatam ancestral lands. For time immemorial, the Tanatam have been part of this landscape and the University of Arizona. The rich history and connection the Tanatam have to the University of Arizona is visible in the land. The saguaro, agave, ocotillo, and creosote bush used to beautify the university campus are sacred plants to the Tanatam. The mountains that surround the University of Arizona and contribute to the advancement in the studies of the Southwest at the UA are the homes of our ancestors. Babatoag, also known as Mount Lemon, Chimamactoag, also known as Tumamak Hill, Toakuo, also known as Santa Rita Mountains, are just several of the many mountain ranges important to the Tanatam culture and identity. Our connection to the land is living and breathing in us here in Chikshan. We use this connection to the land and our ancestors to guide our studies at the University of Arizona. Tehugi, Sapa, thank you.
During this webinar, participants will have the opportunity to ask the panelists questions using the Q&A feature at the bottom of your screen. Please feel free to ask any questions and we will take the time towards the end of the presentation to answer them. I will now pass it on to Vanessa.
Thank you, Leslie. So description of the program. So today we'll be learning about the University of Arizona's partnership with NAU and Thompson Rivers University. Students, staff, and faculty participated in an exciting 3-week indigenous-focused cultural exchange in Australia and New Zealand. So now we will introduce some of the program participants as they will talk about their experience studying abroad. Next slide, please. Yeah, thank you. Felisia is a first-year doctoral student in Arizona's College of Education Center for the Study of Higher Education. For the past 3 years, Felisia has had the honor of serving as a graduate assistant for Native SOAR. She is dedicated to increasing the enrollment and success of American Indian, Alaska Native college students at Arizona. Felisia is a gifted storyteller, and she has significantly contributed to increasing Native SOAR's digital media presence.
Okay, so the next panelist is Aresta. Aresta is a citizen of the Navajo Nation from Sand Springs, Arizona, situated in the Western Navajo Nation and affiliated with the Leupp chapter located in Leupp, Arizona. She is a proficient speaker of the Navajo language, which is her first language. Her area of emphasis is Navajo language, displacement, and disposition of cultural heritage, Native gender, Navajo history and philosophy, Native nation building, indigenous urban studies, tribal government, and federal Indian law and policy.
Our final panelist here today is Cheromiah. Cheromiah is a senior at the University of Arizona, majoring in political science and minoring in food studies. Cheromiah is also a pastry chef at Prep and Pastry here in Tucson. Cheromiah was a world traveler even before the summer cultural exchange. Cheromiah anticipates graduating in May 2021 and hopes to attend graduate school after that. So now I think that's the introduction on our end. So if our panelists want to go ahead and share their materials, now is the time.
All right, so I apologize for the delay there. I'm wondering if we're having issues communicating with our team, but I was going to ask Cheromiah if he could go ahead and go first and introduce himself.
Yeah, 1 second. Hi, my name is Jeremiah Foster. I am Navajo. I'm from Deer Springs, Arizona. That is only about 20 miles northwest of Fort Defiance, Winter Rock area. Yeah, I'm a senior at the University of Arizona, and I am also a community college transfer. I spent 2 years at MCC in Mesa, Arizona, where I got my associate's degree, and I was able to transfer here. And one of the biggest things I wanted to do was, of course, study abroad and visit other foreign nations, foreign countries. And this cultural exchange was presented to me by Aresta herself, our other panelists. Aresta has been my Navajo language teacher for about a year and a half now, and it was a good experience to that I will always take with me whenever I meet more indigenous cultures, and it's something that my family has done themselves, and also um, work with the UN, where they've gotten to work with other indigenous cultures around the world as well. And I know that they're proud of me for doing that. So yeah, that's about me. And Felice, if you want to take over next.
Yeah, actually, Resta, if you want to go ahead and introduce yourself. Aresta, you're on mute.
Thank you, Felice. Yate. I am Aresta Sosipara, and as with the introduction, I'm a citizen of the Navajo Nation. And so, so this, I went as a faculty member with the American Indian Studies Department. And this is a course that is housed in AIS. And the name of this course is Originating Aboriginal and Maori Traditional and Cultural Knowledge. And it's a 3-hour credit hours. And so this is a summer program to share our culture and bridge it with the Aborigines and the Maoris. And how I got involved with this was with the efforts and with Karen Francis Begay and her office as the tribal relations office. And so I got selected as a faculty member, and so I was pretty excited about that. And I think in my area of teaching, it was just it fit right in. And also working with the students, I think one of the first things I wanted to make sure was that I wanted the students to have a good experience, and also to represent the university in a very good way, as well as our tribal nations. And so because we have our ancestral lands and communities, and making sure we observe that. And yes, and Jeremiah was a former student of mine in the Navajo language courses. So we had about 2 graduate students and 2 undergrads that went on the trip. And so I think we pretty much, as a faculty member, having outcomes and, for them to be able to articulate differences and similarities between the 2 cultures of Australia, New Zealand, and Tasmania, and being able to also discuss past and contemporary issues that we might have in that are similar, and to be able to share our beliefs and philosophies and values as an Indigenous people, and to describe where we're from, our lands and our history, and looking at that through our lens. And also, and to be able to learn how to gain skills and be proficient in navigating, in a different culture and a different setting, and also to have that appreciation of global diversity, and to inform others of our experience, and to build new relationships, and so forth. And so that was part of what I wanted to see. And as someone going there with the students, I think we have achieved all those. And so I'm very proud of the students that went, and having to maintain our presence here at the university, as well as there in Australia, Tasmania, and New Zealand. And also, the trip was really wonderful. I have been abroad, but more on a personal trip a couple of times, and I think we'll be talking a little bit about how this differs from that. And so, yeah, so I I think that's it for now. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, Resta. So we're just really thrilled that you all have tuned in to hear a little bit about our experience abroad. For me, this is super exciting because I haven't been able to be in community with Aresta and Jeremiah since the trip. And so we went 2 years ago for the summer and we became acquainted and have been in communication on and off since then. But this is actually the first time where we've been able to really catch up and just hear how we're doing in school and in life. So I'm just really thankful to be in this space with them. I'm also really sad to say that my friend and colleague, Amanda Cheromiah, who was supposed to join us today, got really ill over the last couple of days. And so she actually isn't here for this talk, but we thought it would be great to still honor and celebrate her participation on this trip by playing a clip of the video that she and I created after we came back from New Zealand and Australia. So we're going to go ahead and play her introduction, and it also includes a little bit of introduction about me, and we'll go ahead and just launch into our discussion about the trip. So thank you so much. And also, before we go any further, big thank you to GEL for sponsoring this talk, this discussion for us. It's a really exciting opportunity to share about. So we're really grateful for the platform. And we'd also like to thank Karen Francis Begay out of the Native American Initiatives in the Office of the Provost, because she was a huge and instrumental part of putting all of this together for us. She helped to forge relationships with our sister institutions and these different locations, including Thompson River. And so we're very, very grateful that we were extended the invitation to join this group of great students and faculty and staff. So a big thank you to Karen for that. And also shout out to some native source students who've taken time out of their busy schedules this semester to tune in. We really appreciate you all being here. So without further ado, I will introduce you to Amanda Cheromiah, who is now serving as the director for the Native SOAR program. So just give me one moment while I pull up her introduction.
Tuista e shashka tsana hanusta. Quishi sa au ba hopa showa we shats astraneshi a trawa matzani. Where I am from, my sisters spin and laugh in the lazy river. Where I am from, one of my teenage brothers shows off how high he can jump. Where I am from, my grandma makes fresh tortillas on a wood stove. Where I am from, I love to laugh with my mom. Where I am from, under the burning sun, I'd feed thousands of ants old popcorn. I think ants like popcorn. Where I am from, I'm a doctoral student in higher education at the University of Arizona. Where I am from, I am greatly supported by my community. Where I am from, I get to travel abroad with my best friend, Felisia Tagaban.
Ja, it's She'e Felisia Tagaban Yanishya. Hello, my name is Felisia Tagaban, and my story begins by acknowledging and honoring my parents. My mom, a beautiful and proud Diné woman, is from Black Mesa, Arizona. Her name is Marianne Tagaban, and because of her, I am rich with strength and a desire to help others. My dad, a Tlingit Filipino fisherman and storyteller, is from Petersburg, Alaska. His name is Felisia Tagaban, and because of him, I love to laugh and discover the very best in every situation. I love my parents and honor them for the way they instilled confidence in my heart. Now, as a grad student who recently returned to the University of Arizona for grad school, I am realizing how this confidence was just the beginning of something more complex and more wonderful than I could have ever imagined. It is part of discovering and celebrating Indigenous heritage. It is part of recognizing how we were created unique and beautiful, gifted with a way of knowing that stems from our Indigenous ancestry and radiates into every part of our life. It is part of a resilience that was birthed long before contact and extends past the necessity of survivance. It is part of a powerful, collective existence called Indigenous brilliance.
Awesome. So there was a little bit of an introduction of Mandy, our director for Native SOAR, and myself. And we just wanted to share with you what a great time that we had traveling abroad. And so with that, we're going to go ahead and transition to talking about the first part of our trip, which was in Tasmania. So I am going to go ahead and turn it over to our panelists. Jeremiah, I wouldn't mind starting us off and sharing your initial response to being in Tasmania, Australia.
Okay. Our trip to Australia, of course, began in Tasmania. We flew into Sydney, and we land from Sydney. We connected all the way to Hobart, Tasmania, and Tasmania was interesting because I I knew only one person I knew had ever been to Tasmania, and that was my grandfather. My grandfather told me that it was one of the most like he felt it was one of the most spiritual places he's ever been in his life, and he's someone that really doesn't say much about places like that outside of our reservation, his home where we grew up. And I didn't understand what he said until we got there, and it was just amazing. Like the entirety of that island, their people, their culture. Immediately, I just felt safe. I felt at home, and that first day where we walked in to the university, we were brought in, and they had a talking circle waiting for us, and a bunch of eager, excited Aboriginal students and faculty members and elders were waiting for us with open arms. And I remember in the circle they had for us on each of our chairs, they had these gum tree leaves. And I actually snuck this back into America and even through New Zealand. And I still keep it close to me. As you can see, I have it on my desk. And because they were such a big influence on me. One of the faculty members, Tamika, pretty much became like a big sister to me. And I was raised only child. I never had that feeling of someone I could talk to so intimately with and trust. And I've only known her for 2 weeks, and yet every few months we'll connect, um, catch up, because you know they're just the salt of the earth out there in Tasmania, and it's hard to describe unless you've been there and you've interacted with these people, because they're proud of who they are. Um, when they took us to the park, and they started teaching us some of their history, and started teaching us about their foliage and their plants, and then what they do with their plants. And you could hear it in their voices how inspired and how excited they were to teach us about those things. And them going talking about plants, talking about some of the wildlife, reminded me growing up with my grandparents, where they teach me that stuff, um, up there in Four Corners. And it really cemented how at home I became, because these people were like us. I'm so proud of where I come from. I'm so proud of the land I walked and I grew up, and they felt exactly the same. I've appreciated how they took us in so readily, and I do hope that if any of you decide to visit Australia, Tasmania, or anything like that, I urge you to please do so, because this trip really gave me a new branch of family. As I said, I'm in touch most of the time with a lot of these people that I've met, because they've become an extension of my family, and I'm so proud to know that they're there taking care of their land, taking care of their traditions and their values, and knowing that I want to live up to that standard. I am doing the same here, you know. So yeah, that was just one of my biggest takeaways about Tasmania and its people. And as I said before, the land, the atmosphere is unlike anything you've ever seen. And they've open free open invitation to come back anytime they want. They've told me we can go spear diving, diving for abalone, scallops. We can go wallaby hunting, they said. And, you know, and I believe that. And one of the faculty members that was our guides, his name was Jacob. And Jacob actually gave me this pair of clapping sticks. And he made these himself for us. And he only made 2 pairs. One pair went to Maddie from Thompson Rivers University, and the other was to me. And I'm always going to cherish this. I have it on my shelf, and it's something that's really dear to me, and it shows me how much they cared as well, because this is handcrafted. This is made by Jacob. And I remember one of the nights we were there, it wasn't from this wood, but it was a different tree where he was cutting down, and he makes these, and he cut down some wood to make some for another time. So that just showed to me how important we've all become to each other. And like I said, they were a family to us, and I'm never going to forget that. Yeah. So, and I believe Felice is going to be showing some clips. So yeah.
Yeah, Jeremiah, that's really special, and I actually am remembering things as you're talking. So thank you so much for sharing your memories with all of us, because you're right. It was really special to be invited into their community and really just into their family. They not only showed us so much love and respect, but they also invited us to learn about who they were. And they just basically invited us into their circle. And so I just to support what you said, Jeremiah, about urging students to go. I mean, I would definitely support that as well. And in saying that, I never thought I'd have an experience like this. I was an undergraduate at the U of A, and the idea of studying abroad never even crossed my mind. A lot of it was just because I really do consider myself a first-gen student. And the idea of getting money together to go on a trip just was never even a possibility for me. And so when this opportunity came about, I'm just so thankful that I was able to not only find resources through our staff on campus and through faculty on campus, but I was just able to really just sort of set that aside. I mean, initially I thought that was going to be a huge barrier to me going on this trip, but in the end, it came together, and we just got so much support and so much love, especially from the American Indian Studies Department, who set aside funding for us, and also too from the Native American Student Affairs Center on our campus. They also provided some really important resources. And so I, again, just am reminded of how special this trip was, because even though we were there for just a little window of time, we experienced so much. And it's because of our community coming together with their communities to really make it happen. And so I did want to share a little clip because it also describes some of what Jeremiah is describing in terms of just spending time with one another, sharing food with one another, and also too, just really coming very quickly into cultural acceptance and understanding. Even though, you know, we're continents and oceans apart, that we still experienced just a closeness that I don't think you could ever really capture unless you go there. So I'm going to go ahead and share this out. So if you wouldn't mind giving me one moment.
Things is that any other Indigenous person you meet, you know, you can always talk to them like family. There's historical context that you get no matter where you're from. You understand each other to a degree because your families, your ancestors have been through very similar things. So there's some things you don't have to explain to other Indigenous peoples, and I think that's really beautiful.
Oh, but you were still at home. Bred now in their second year, so we're really proud to say that we've launched an animal back into the wilderness, into its country. They've bred food in a row for the first opportunity born in the wild. The markings, of course, the camouflage or also identity. Serves both purposes.
It's okay.
Being that the markings they have. She's trying to climb back, mate.
Scratchy.
Missing one. The markings.
So Aresta, I know you had really, again, related to the sort of Indigenous connection. And so I wanted to invite you to share, you can talk about the yarning or yarning circle or just the gathering that we had together there with different kinds of food. But I just wanted to invite you to share what your impression was as we were there in Tasmania.
Yes, thank you, Felicia, and thank you for sharing, Jeremiah, your thoughts and everything. And I really agree with you and everything that you say. But yeah, first I want to really emphasize that Karen Francis Begay, in her capacity as Assistant Vice President for Tribal Relations back in 2019, she really forged relations with the institutions that we had gone with, which is Thompson River University from Canada, as well as Northern Arizona University. And she worked really hard in getting funding for our trip. And we also, in addition to what was mentioned, I also want to mention donors that believe in the cultural exchanges with within the university and with to different countries and working, collaborating with other universities as well. So with the gathering that we first saw, where we were in a circle and eating, that was like a welcome, and we kind of went through this welcome ceremony. And also what really, that part, aside from the I guess saging or cleansing by the eucalyptus plants, was also the food. And what really struck me was there's what they call a mutton bird. So when I heard that, it just really resonated with me, because as a Diné person, we love mutton, sheep meat. So it just, so I was really enthused about that, and it was pretty tasty. But yeah, just the sharing of their traditional knowledge in that space where before we began to eat, they shared their stories. They talked about who they are and how, a little bit about their history, and and also you know, speaking more and more of their language and learning about that part of, you know, their community, and also speaking about and showing us the different types of medicinal plants, or the different types of plants that are significant to their culture, and also in some ways they were reclaiming those as well, learning more and more about them, and you know, and their experience with colonization, how the same thing here, how those events had in some ways impacted their ability to practice further, you know, to limited their ability to practice more of their culture. And so it's the same as here as well. But yeah, so that was something that we had shared in common. And also, what was it? Yeah, just the, you know, the sharing of our stories, and helping to share our similarities, and just a lot of that. And that was a really good one. And also I wanted to talk about, before I forget, it was something to see, regarding the Southern Cross. When we were there one of the evenings we were there in Tasmania, it was pointed out to us what was the Southern Cross, because you do hear about it, but the only way you see it is, you know, being on that side of the world. So yeah, so that was another event that I recall. And so, you know, there was, you know, everyone was so engaging, and regarding, you know, about their culture, their history, and, you know, sharing of food. And that was, and so that was how it came about just throughout the entire trip. So, yeah, go ahead, Felicia. Thank you.
Awesome. Yeah, so there is some really great stuff. I mean, again, you know, we're understanding the world and with the lens of colonization, and also with contact with European settlers and colonizers, right? And so there was a very sort of heavy exchange there, because we did have a lot of shared experiences, and even just shared understanding of those issues, as colonialism has impacted the Americas as well, obviously. But there was also an exchange of a lot of values that I think are really special. I mean, especially in the realm of just being able to come together and laugh and have fun, and just really enjoy one another's company, cultures, and customs. And so I wanted to share a really fun video, because to me, this was the best part of the trip. Like, not only were we making friends with, you know, peers and friends from the U of A, but we also met friends from NAU and new friends from Thompson Rivers. And then also the folks that we met when we were there at the prospective universities in both Australia and New Zealand. And there's really nothing like it. I mean, I just don't know how to really capture what we experienced in words. And so I'm just going to go ahead and share out another clip of this video, because again, we didn't really spend that much time together, you know, prepping for the trip or getting to know each other, but all of those relations came about as we spent time together in the air. The flight was like 16 hours, but then also too spending time in a van when we were spending time together, just getting to know each other and sharing stories about being college students in all of these different places. So it was just a lot of fun, where there was tons of laughter and just, you know, a lot of good stories. So I'm going to go ahead and share this 1 second.
Oh dear. So Aura has 4 bags now. 5. 5. 6.
Father status.
And we're not even helping her.
I'm speaking video recording.
You got it, Aura.
So yeah, I'll go ahead and just kind of pause there for a second. I mean, as you can tell, we really enjoyed spending time just like cracking up about basically everything. But one funny story that happened was actually between when we transitioned from one location in Australia to another location in New Zealand. And basically, it was our last night in Australia, and a bunch of us decided to go downtown, and we were just, you know, being tourists, right? We're like looking around, just taking in the sights. And it's kind of funny because I actually spent the majority of my time like capturing a lot of these images that you're seeing in the video, and just kind of trying to record everything that happened because we knew that we wanted to put this video together after our trip. And so I mean, I spent a lot of time with my phone, like in my face, you know, I was, like I said, just trying to put all of this together with Mandy. And one time I actually wasn't even looking at my phone. I was just walking, like I had my phone in my hand and I was going up some stairs. We were just coming out of like a subway system. And as I was walking up the stairs, my shoe caught onto a stair and I totally fell forward. And since I had my phone in my hand and a drink in another hand, I couldn't stop my fall. Like it seemed like it was in slow motion, but anyway, what ended up happening was I totally busted my kneecap on a concrete stair. It was awful. And I ended up kind of having to spend the next day with my foot elevated. And Aresta was amazing because she took care of me. Like she was bringing me food the next day because I actually missed a day of participation in the program. But the funny part about all of this is that while we were in the plane, my knee started to swell. Like, I don't know if it had to do with the altitude or whatever, but like, I mean, the injury itself obviously caused swelling, but anyway, the pain was intense and I was worried that I actually like broke something or whatever. So anyways, as we were talking about it, my friend Mandy was in the front seat in front of me and she was sitting next to our other friend Kia from North NAU. And they had this whole conversation like, we need to convince Felice not to walk around on her bad knee, you know, like we need to tell her when we get to the airport, she needs to use, you know, a wheelchair. And so anyway, just before the flight ended, they both turned around and they like tag teamed me. They're like, okay, Felice, like you really need to consider, you know, your health, you need to be wise. Like they're telling me all this stuff about being careful and all this. And so they convinced me to get into the wheelchair, which, you know, I felt bad about because I'm like, no, I can walk, you know. But anyway, all of this is going on. And we ended up getting to the airport in New Zealand and everybody all of a sudden was like, hey, Felice, do you think you can carry this? And so they were piling on like backpacks and like bags, like overnight bags and stuff onto me in the wheelchair. But the thing is, they forgot me. So they totally abandoned me when everybody stopped for a pit stop to use the bathroom. And so there I was sitting with all this like stuff and I can't even go anywhere. And then what ended up happening was that neither Mandy or Kia ended up pushing me around in the airport. So anyway, it was just such a funny, I'm sure obviously this is more funny if you're there, but it was just like hilarious because after all of that, they ended up leaving me and there I was, you know, stuck with all this stuff. But anyway, my knee ended up healing. It ended up being just fine, but it was super funny. And I always give them a hard time about it now because I'm like, man, so much for being wise and looking out for each other and all this stuff. But anyway, I just really absolutely loved the community and just really enjoyed being able to be there to make friends and hold on to old friends. So we're going to go ahead and transition then from the time that we spent in Australia to talking about New Zealand. So Jeremiah, if you wouldn't mind sharing your impression as we transferred over to New Zealand.
Okay, New Zealand. Yes. The one word I could describe New Zealand was proud. They were a very proud people, and yeah, I'll be like Felice, and I'll tell a little funny story. One of the first things that happened after we landed in Auckland, I do faintly remember Lisa in a wheelchair a little bit. I don't remember too much about it. I just remember her in it a little bit. And I remember we were completely drained, completely tired. Like I said, Felice was hurt. We already had a man down. And we were just, our schedule was we'll head to the hotel, we'll relax, and we'll regroup. We'll be good for tomorrow before we head down to Hamilton. Change of plan last minute. Apparently, we were not staying in a hotel that night, and we took a hour and a half drive, two separate vehicles down to Hamilton that night. And one of the funniest things was the van that I was in, our driver did not tell us about the cultural custom where when you are brought into the home or the house the long house they had for us set up was we had to present ourselves with a song. So she did not tell us that until we entered the city after an hour and a half drive down. Whereas everyone else in the other bus found out. And so there was this giant big confusion. Everyone in our bus is trying to scramble to figure out what we're going to do. And then it wasn't until we met it with the other bus before they told us, yeah, we have a song prepared. They told us like right away. So we've been practicing the entire way down. And it was just the funniest thing ever because everyone on our bus, when she told us that, we just completely 0 to 100. We freaked out. We're wondering what are we going to do. I'm asking Arista, what should we like, what songs, because I know we have gone over some in our classes before, and it was just very, very chaotic at those last like 20 minutes. But then something interesting happened where after we were also dressing up in more formal attire to present ourselves um, to the Maori. Like some elders were there and some students. The welcoming ceremony essentially, and a lot of us were actually changing on the side of the road. We pulled over and a lot of us were changing on the side of the road. And when we got to the location, you just heard this voice singing, chanting, and the voice was so powerful, and it enthralled you. It hit you immediately, and you knew that like this is we're serious now. We can't be kidding around. We can't be doing any of this stuff. We have to be respectful. This is it. And a switch in all of our heads hit, and immediately we're in formal mode. And that voice, um, which I believe you may hear eventually, was very serene and regal, and that's also a very hard thing to describe. But that was one of the biggest takeaways for me meeting the Maori people. And like I said, they were very proud people. Their customs very strict, but in a way that's almost admirable. Growing up, traditional Navajo in my family, a lot of my other family members have converted to Christianity or also become Catholic, and they don't follow the old way anymore. But me and my immediate family, my grandfather, my mother, my late grandmother, my late uncle, we were traditional. We grew up traditional. Every morning I'd go out with my grandfather and I'd use tutadine or I'd take white corn and I'd plant it outside, sing a prayer to the rising sun. And it was these kind of customs that made me feel at ease as well. As I mentioned in Tasmania, how they treat their customs, but also there's a sense of formality that I was familiar with as well. My days spending hours in a hogan with medicine men with my grandfather, and that made me, like I said, feel comfortable, and I got to experience something that very few people, natives here in America, indigenous people here in America, will uh, ever go through. And I think it's just important at this point is to find out how similar we are, as I mentioned before, with the Tasmanians, with mainland Australia, the Aborigines, and as well as the Maoris. And this experience on this trip was so humbling. One of the biggest takeaway, another takeaway was our lodging. Like I said, we didn't stay in a hotel that first night. In fact, that longhouse, the marae, as I believe it was called, was our home for the next few days. And we settled in. They had sleeping pads for us and sleeping bags, and we all lined it up along the house, and we all slept in the same big room. And that brought me back to my childhood at my great grandmother's, sleeping in a hogan, all of us on sheepskins and homemade rugs. And that experience was so different from Tasmania, but it was just as enriching and important. And the people as well were just very, very kind and genuine people. They, as I mentioned before, they also became kind of a family to us, an extended family. They brought us in, they showed us around. We got to know them very personally, very fast. And that's another thing is we didn't stay with them as long as we did in Tasmania or Sydney, but the added factor that we were all sleeping, and even sometimes I think a few nights they did stay in the lodge with us. And that camaraderie of them being in there with us just elevated to a whole nother level. And that's pretty much what I taken away from my trip to New Zealand. So yeah, thank you.
Yeah, that was really beautiful. And I think the video clip that I'm going to share with you all is a great just expression of the community that Jeremiah is describing. So I'm going to go ahead and play it. And I think you'll see exactly what we're talking about when we say family and just inviting us right in. Awesome. So Aresta, would you like to go ahead and share your impressions of New Zealand?
Yes. Before I go there, I just want to mention that I think preparation to go there, I did give readings to, just background or maybe history about the locations that we were going to visit. But I'm not sure if, that helps a little bit, but I think the experience really comes when you're there, when you're hands-on and you're interacting. And yeah, that's where the learning comes from. And also, I just want to go back a little bit back to Tasmania. One thing I wanted to mention was there was a point in our trip where we came together in Lawnsons, I believe it was called, with community members, and there were elders there. There were young people. It was almost like being at in Navajo, what we call a chapter meeting. It's a community meeting where our leaders, our local leaders come together and they talk about issues and so forth. But in this case, that's what it reminds me of is, with some of these with the community leaders there and, speaking with them and the introductions as well as the food. Yeah, food was a large part of our interaction with them, and they fed us well. And also with New Zealand, what Jeremiah mentioned, the language is the impression I had was that they had this expectation that you knew your language and that you're able to introduce yourself in your native language. So we all were able, we all did that. And also to share a song. And so, so Kia from NAU, she was able to share a song in her language. And also, and Jeremiah talked about the marae where we all slept in as a more of a, yeah, so all of us were in that space right next to each other each day, waking up early in the morning and also being fed, but also the evening time. We had this talking circle where we would kind of talk about our day, talk about our experience and so forth. And we all, yeah, I think we all learned something from those talking circles. And it's, yeah, they are a very proud people. They have really pushed to learn their language. And at university that we were at in Hamilton, they do have an excellent immersion program in learning their language. And also, we also got to meet one of the, what we regard as a scholar who has, I guess I say rock star scholar, Linda Smith, Dr. Linda Smith, who has written several books, but one that really sticks out with me is that indigenous methodologies, and that's one book that going through grad school, it was a requirement to read, and so and also. And traveling, just seeing their country and learning a little bit more about, particularly New Zealand and their landscape and their significance of places that are sacred, and also we were able to learn more about the, I guess, marine life or the being at the ocean and how yeah at both places at Tasmania and also at New Zealand and also in Australia. But yeah, so Jeremiah might talk a little bit more about that. So and also I think one thing that struck me was that in some ways we have, they have like leadership, traditional leadership within the Maori communities that continue to exist, and also the sharing of some of their sacred sites, and the significance behind that, and also some of the and how they were able to I guess mitigate colonialism when they were facing that, in terms of um, um, maybe their territories and so forth. But yeah, it was I guess, coming from a different perspective. It was something that it was something to experience, and to have those exchanges and conversations, to have those exchanges with experience, actually being there. So thank you, Felice.
So, Aresta, I don't want to let the opportunity pass in terms of really showing just what you're describing, and going to Australia, and like really participating with a community setting, like set in the community. So it wasn't necessarily like on campus, but like you said, like at a chapter house in community. And so I'm going to go ahead and play this little clip, because it starts out with us in another big circle where we're getting to meet elders, and we're getting to meet knowledge keepers, and people throughout the community who really care about Indigenous issues, and absolutely are moving towards liberation, and also expressions of indigeneity to be celebrated. And so we didn't get a chance to talk about this, and we probably won't, given that our time is kind of coming towards an end. But we did get to meet quite a few activists and people within the community who are doing work to really advance their nations, and also to advance the emerging leaders. And so that was really special. And so in the setting that Aresta was describing, we did get to go to this community center, and it was kind of like a convergence of the past, like leaders and elders, right, who had been paving a way for the community for centuries. And then there was also the meeting of new leaders and new leadership. And so it was really beautiful just to see those expressions, but more importantly, it was awesome for us to witness them coming together while embracing us at the same time. So I'm going to go ahead and share this clip here with you all. It starts there, and then we actually switch over to looking at another community setting, but on the university campus. So you'll see the transition and difference there. We eventually heard of how our Tasmanian Aboriginal brothers and sisters once had ancestors who numbered in the thousands and were reduced to 47 during a destructive 50-year time period. What amazed me most in learning this was realizing how this violent and tumultuous history now fuels a courageous passion to continue what was almost eradicated. Preserved by resilient ancestors, our brothers and sisters have so much to celebrate.
Marang Nangari, Meng Wilega Warajari. Marang Nangari, Meng Wilega Wathari. Meng Wilega Wathari. Meng Wilega Withari. Meng Wilega Wathari. Marang Nangari.
So yeah, again, it was just such a privilege and an honor to be surrounded by so many powerful leaders, and also just to be inspired not only to see what they were doing to serve their communities and families there, but to capture some of that we would come back to the United States and come back to our campus and our jobs and our schoolwork with a new sense of empowerment, and also just a real reverence and respect for the resilience that our own people have had in this land. That's something that I feel very proud of when I review this video, or even when I reflect on the time that we spent there. For me personally, it really enlivened or awakened just a new sense of understanding who I am and where I come from. It was absolutely transformational in that sense. Again, you know, it's you wouldn't think that going to another nation would do all of that, but it really did. I mean, I just remembered coming back and thinking, gosh, this has really changed and set the course for me in the future. Like I just kept thinking, gosh, I can't wait to get back to be within my own community and start serving the students on our campus in ways that I never even dreamed of before. So it was really exciting to come alongside people who had such a strength of understanding who they are and being empowered by that to do the same here. And so I am just, again, super thankful and thrilled for that. We obviously have so much that we could say about all of this, but I think we're going to go ahead and share one last clip that really encapsulates the community that we found as we were there. And then I think we're going to go ahead and transition to a question and answer session. So I am queuing up this last clip, and I hope you enjoy it as much as we did while we were there. So here we go. Let me get you queued with me. Oops.
Look at Shamakaloa, Makayaquin, Benanteia. Look at Shamakaloa, Makayaquin, Benanteia. Willalo Anna, Willalo Anna, Eque Ashumakaloa.
By the end of our experience abroad, and even now, we are still in awe with the beauty and brilliance of our relatives all over the world. We are so thankful for their stories and for the way that they inspired and empowered us to continue our work at home, especially as we reach out and build up emerging leaders and world changers.
Awesome. All right. Well, that concludes the presentation section of this. We want to go ahead and transition to answering questions that you might have. We would just really love to hear from you, and also hopefully inspire some travelers out there when the time comes again. So let's do this.
Wow, thank you so much to our panelists for sharing that powerful and intimate recount of your travel abroad experiences. That was great. So as mentioned, we are going to transition into the Q&A portion of today's webinar. I encourage participants or attendees, as you were listening, or if you have any questions now, feel free to drop that into the Q&A feature at the bottom of your Zoom screen. But with that being said, I do have a question for our panelists. So feel free to each take time to respond, or if somebody wants to respond first, kind of delegate that. So in terms of my first question, I'm really curious if you guys could share the reactions from your community when you told them that you were interested or planning on studying abroad.
Jeremiah, go ahead.
All right. So the reaction in my community was, I guess, everyone is really excited for me. Um, it's very different, I guess, for my community and my family because I come from a family of world travelers. My grandfather and my grandmother um, have done indigenous work with the United Nations, and therefore they've traveled the world for many years, even before my mom was born. And even when my mom was born, they always kept traveling, and me included. I'm a world traveler. France, Spain, Italy, Russia, Finland, England, um, now Australia and New Zealand to add to the list. So they were excited and proud, and also other members of my family have also, I guess, traveled the world. And another grandmother of mine was teaching English in Russia, and her daughter was a study abroad student from here, from the U of A, and she spent a semester, I believe, a semester in Madrid. So there was no, I guess, shock factor, but more of like they knew it was going to happen. It was inevitable that I was going to be a part of a study abroad trip in my college experience. Yeah.
Yeah, so I know I shared this a little bit at the top of the hour, but I definitely never anticipated doing anything like this. I didn't do it as an undergrad back in the day. And then when I was in the middle of my master's program at the U of A, I just never knew that there would be an opportunity like this. And so when I shared this with my family, they were so thrilled to hear that this opportunity came along, and they were just really excited. I know my mom especially was just asking all these awesome questions. She's like, how are you going to pack? And, like, what do you need? And I kind of felt like I was going on a spring break trip, like as an undergrad all over again. Like, it was really funny to just kind of see her own perspective of me traveling. And also too, I think the big thing for my extended family was just also just being inspired to see that happen, like where I have younger siblings, and even more importantly, I have little nephews and nieces that really look to everything that I do. And so they were just amazed that I could do something like this. And I think the thing that touched me with the most was just listening to my nephews and hearing them say, like, man, I want to do all the things that you do, Auntie. Like, I want to go to all of these places. And so it just was really meaningful, to share the experience with them. And of course, when I was over there, I bought a bunch of things to bring back so that they could just experience it for themselves. But more importantly, I hope that they come to the U of A and also get to do even better things, even more exciting things while they're undergrads here. So I think they were really excited about it all.
As for me, I think, my family and my relatives, those who I informed, they were excited about it. And they wanted to hear stories about it as well. And also being a part of the American Indian Studies faculty member, I just felt so humbled that they thought I should be the one to go. And I mean, that was really humbling because they had the confidence as a faculty member, um, that they saw that. So, and then also, there's reciprocity as well. We were able to host the students as well as some of the faculty members that came from Australia, New Zealand, maybe was it New Zealand, but anyhow, Tasmania as well. And when they came here after our trip and coming back, because the group from Australia, Tasmania, and New Zealand came back up into the North America. And so, and also, one of the things that that really kind of stood up for me was as a faculty member, but also as a tribal member, citizen. The gifting aspect of it too, where that reciprocity was there for each community that we visited. And so, but I think for me, most important was that we all had a really good experience, and that it was a learning experience, and that we had we had a takeaway, and also being, as a faculty person, to make sure that that we all, and that the outcomes were achieved. And so, yeah, it was a very humbling, exciting experience. Never thought I would go down south, down to the other part of the world. Yeah, I can't say much, but I'm just very humbled. So thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you for each taking the time to share your experiences. It's great to hear that. It sounds like consistently across all of you all having that support in your travel journeys is something that is really, really nice to hear that you had that as you ventured to these places. With that being said, my next question is, you spoke about these very personalized experiences. Could you speak about how do you think that these programs differ if you had gone by yourselves? So what did they bring that you wouldn't have gotten if you went without the support of the community?
I can go. I think if I had gone by myself, I imagine I would be more like a tourist. I probably wouldn't have experienced some of the in-depth parts of the trip, as well as building the relationships and also experiencing the reciprocities of hosting as well as gifting. And also, yeah, just the knowledge that it shares, particularly like the indigenous knowledge from those areas as well. And also the sharing of language, learning new words or phrases. And also, yeah, so it would be, I think, more of a tourist aspect for me. So yeah. So I'm glad that that wasn't the case. So.
Yeah, me too. I'm just really glad that I had a chance to make so many connections there. Because as I said, we connected when we came back. I mean, especially with the girls who came down from Northern Arizona. It was really cool to just have so much fun with them while we were there. But then also when we came back to Arizona, we actually went and made a trip to NAU, and then we went back to Zuni, where our friend Kia is from. And then we made a trip even to Sanders to pick up another friend on the way. And so it was really cool to be able to meet new people. And I mean, even to this day, we still have a Facebook group that messages each other, and we kind of give life updates and stuff. And even since that time, some of the girls that were on that trip have graduated. So it's really cool to see what they're doing now. And, we just had a lot of fun connecting. And we have actually we tried to make plans to reconnect like right after the summer had ended. Of course, things got busy, but then we made another plan, and then COVID really impacted those connections. But nonetheless, we've been able to keep in touch online and also through social. So that's been really cool. So yeah, I think this experience is best had with friends, and also with the opportunity to make new friends.
Yeah, so had I gone by myself, I think I would agree with the other two. It would have been a lot different because we were all together, and like I said, we kind of evolved into that family. Um, but also, like there are some aspects, that I wanted to take myself. Um, Sometimes you want to be put in an unfamiliar situation. Um, I was also the only male on the trip, the only male student, and so sometimes it felt a little bit lonely being by like. So I mean, I did do my own things at some points. I went places by myself, and I connected with a lot of the male Aboriginals and Maoris, um, being the only male on the trip. And one thing I did take away was I try my hardest to meet as many people as I can on the trip. And one example, I guess, would be all of us in the museum in Hobart when the rest of the group is starts looking at one of the exhibits, and one of the elders that accompanied us, his name was Jim Everett. Me and him were sharing a cup of coffee earlier um, in the cafe at the museum, talking about wildfires. Myself, I'm also a certified like a wildland firefighter as well, and so we were just talking about wildfires for like 20 minutes, and I saw him kind of sneaking away from the group, and I just wondered like what he was doing. So I went up and asked him. I said, "What are you doing, man?" And he's like, "Oh, I'm just going to see a friend upstairs. He has an exhibit." And I said, "Oh, can I come?" He's like, "Yeah, yeah, sure, come up." So instead of being with the group, I was took a chance and I went with him, and I met an artist of his, an art friend of his was an artist, and the man traveled around, and they were telling me about their experiences in New York, in Moscow, in London, in Barcelona. And to me that was really enriching, getting not because that was something that was not part of the group, but it was um my own personal part that I got to enjoy. Um, Another example would be, um, I remember a bunch of the group went to go when we were in Sydney. They went to go check the opera house, and I remember I was sitting on a bench with, as I mentioned before, Tamika, and I was also on the bench with Adrian and Tanya, who were University of Sydney faculty. And Tanya actually I remember her making a joke about, "Oh, thank God you're the only one here." She's like, "I didn't want to pay for ice cream for everyone," because she took us out to ice cream. Me and Tamika and Adrian, she bought us ice cream, and she's like, "Thank goodness you two are the only ones." I was. She's like, "I don't know if I had enough money," and so I remember we were all sitting on a bench eating ice cream, looking at the harbor, and Adrian looks at me and just says, "You can look at this every day if you want, if you take your master's here." And I remember I just started chuckling, thinking, that's not a bad idea. Could be a plan sometime in the future. Um, and it's just experiences like that where I got to experience it by myself, or not by myself, but in terms of like the group. It was something created with myself, um, and I just think that is important, because some people don't fit the group dynamic as well, but you can always find your own pace on trips and things like that. Yeah, that's all.
Thank you so much for everyone's answers. We have a last question from one of the attendees, and it says, "What moment of your experiences abroad do you feel was a great life lesson that you can use as advice for others?"
That is a really awesome question. I'm going to try my best to fit it under like 2 minutes because I think we only have a couple of seconds left here. But I think for me, as I was saying before, it was really powerful to be around so many people with such a great understanding of their culture and their history, and also of their communities. I think that really dynamically impacted the way that I saw myself, and also too just the way that I created and made new connections with my own heritage and with my own familial relationships, honestly in ways that I never really knew of before. um, I mean, it's interesting, right? Where you can be in the same body and experience life the same way. And then something like that can come and just really change you from the inside out. And so I would say for sure, staying together in the marae in New Zealand was transformative in that um, Resta and Jeremiah said, they had such an unapologetic way of representing themselves and their culture and their language that it really inspired me. I just thought, gosh, there's something so powerful about being unapologetically Indigenous. And so I know that that's absolutely something that I took away from the trip and would advise anybody to consider. As you experience more and more of the world, it really is fascinating how it causes you to have an even greater understanding of your own world back at home. And so I would just encourage anybody who's listening or anyone who's thinking about going on a study abroad trip sometime soon that you can really go and step into another world and come back into your own world with a brand new set of eyes, with a brand new lens. So I hope that answers your question, Nayeli. Thank you so much.
Okay, yeah, thank you for answering that. So in closing, we would like to thank our panelists for their time today. And before we let you guys go, I want to mention our post assessment, which is on this slide. Attendees, if you want to take a moment and take out your phone, we put a QR code up that you can take a picture of that will link you to our post assessment. And then my colleague Leslie has also put that in the chat for you all. This is really helpful to get feedback, and we would like to reiterate that completing this assessment will count for your attendance to the webinar today. So we hope that you all enjoyed this presentation and learned a lot from it. Thank you again to our panelists for taking the time out of your busy schedules to speak with us and share your experiences traveling abroad. For our attendees, if you enjoyed our presentation today, feel free to catch us tomorrow at 1 p.m. for the final iteration of our January webinar series. We're going to be hosting a really exciting event about traveling abroad during the times of the COVID-19 pandemic. So it's going to be a really interesting panel speaking about that. Like we said earlier, we are really eager to get traveling again. So everyone out there, please stay safe, mask up, and bear down. Thanks again.